Welcome to Art Rep DG's new podcast. I am Debbe Goldstein, and I will be the host for the podcast, 5 Pieces. This podcast is in conjunction with BG Gallery in Santa Monica, California, who has a lively online program called 5 Pieces. On the 5th of every month, 5 artists are brought together online for a month. Their work, if purchased on August 5th and 6th, is 25% off. Then, from August 7th to the end of the show, it's 10% off. It's a great opportunity to collect works of art from artists you are familiar with and those you are just now being introduced to. Unfortunately, one of the artists, Joel Werring, is traveling today and can't be with us for this podcast. Today's participants include painter Dal Henderson, photographer Jim Kazanjian, performance artist Jill Kroesen, and painter Gay Summer Rick. Gay Summer Rick exhibits with BG Gallery, and I saw her work in the gallery and loved it. Jim Kazanjian is one of the artists I represent. I have known Jill Kroesen's work for over 40 years, and I met Joel Werring, who cannot be with us, through my niece in Boston. I met Dal Henderson through the actor Barry Livingston, who I have met through my representation of Titus Welliver. How it is that we meet and branch out and find out new ideas is one of the most exciting things about being in the art world. So that being said, I think we should begin and have all of the artists introduce themselves and say a little bit about their work. So Dal, would you like to go first?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Dal Henderson, and my work, I guess a quick way to describe it is, I always talk about it as mistake making and correction. I kind of attack the work with all the basic things of having to, buy materials, cut the wood, make a frame, stretch the canvas, all that kind of preparatory stuff that goes into making a painting. And sometimes for me, that seems like a lot of stuff that you have to do kind of consciously. And when it comes to the paint, it's becomes more intuitive. It's about moving color around, trying to find interesting things that happen with mark making. And so that's kind of basically what I do. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Jill Kroesen.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about your work?
Well, they call me a performance artist, but I don't really like that term. But there's no term for me. Anyway, I make kind of musicals that are not about actual characters, but are systems portraits of certain things, like the writers thing in New York, or how people raise their children, or the relationship between Russia and the United States, or whatever. So the plays have quite a few characters and many songs, and that's what I do.
Great. Gay.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Gay Summer Rick. I am, as Debbie said earlier, based in the LA area. There's a quiet vibration and unexpected beauty in commonplace elements in the urban environment. And my work describes this in an atmospheric and dreamlike yet familiar manner. I create my paintings using oil paint, and I apply that with palette knives. It's partly a commitment to environmentalism. I use no toxic solvents, and there's no cleanup or waste. But equally important is that I use the knives to achieve this certain quality in the layers of paint and veils of color.
That's a beautiful description of your work, actually. Jim Kazanjian, tell us a little bit about your work. You.
I well, basically, I could sum it up probably in one sentence, but it's basically I'm really fascinated with the narrative potential of architecture. And so I use photography to kind of unfold that idea. We believe subconsciously still we look at photographs as though they're connected to the real. But it makes it very sort of seductive in a sense to manipulate these photos and create a space that could or could not exist. It kind of opens up these numerous possibilities. That's pretty much it. That wasn't one sentence, actually.
But it does describe your work very well. So thank you. All right. So I'd like to ask all of you, and I know this seems like a sort of a funny question, but I think it's really quite serious. What was that aha moment when you knew you wanted to be an artist? And I asked that question because after thinking about all of us, you know, particularly now, being in the art world is a very courageous thing right now. It's very brave to stake your life making images and musicals and whatever, because there's not a lot of support for the arts. And I think we're all sort of very brave to continue to be professionals in this world. So what was that moment when you knew that that's where you know, that world was where you wanted to be? So, Dal.
Okay. I have thought about this a lot over the years, and I think it probably happened when I was still in high school, because I had been taking art classes and had a great art teacher in high school. And I grew up, my mother was a painter. She taught art at Hollenbeck, which is an East Los Angeles area. And so art was always kind of around the house, but I didn't really think much about it as a life pursuit until I became aware of Jackson Pollock. And I think what that did for me, after taking a lot of classes and learning how to render and make things look, you know, real, which was, in a way, it was a nice technical thing, but it was a little bit boring. And I didn't feel like I was being able to express myself. And when I saw an article about Jackson Pollock and just the whole idea of that kind of freedom, it just kind of, it was like, wow, that's great. And from that point on, I got excited about just getting a hold of paint and, you know, putting it on something, whatever I could find to paint on. If it was a piece of plywood, mostly it was things like that I did initially. And, you know, from there it was like, I guess I was stuck.
Gay, do you want to go next?
Yeah. Well, I'm the youngest sibling in a family of artists, and our parents loved and instilled in us a love of art. Our mother was a creative, our father a collector, and from the beginning, it just seemed natural to be an artist. Like
Wow.
there wasn't really a choice. That's what we did.
That's fantastic. I love that answer. Jim, do you want to go next?
Sure. I don't know. Fully formed in terms of what I wanted to do, far back as I can remember. But, you know, the medium was kind of fluctuating. Photography.
You have to speak up a little bit, Jim.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
It was the idea of being a visual artist was something that I have no origin point for in terms of my memory. So it was just a matter of over time focusing on a specific medium that I felt most connected to.
Okay. Okay. Jill.
Well, I was stoned and listening to Tchaikovsky's Concerto in D, Violin Concerto in D, and I decided to be a composer. That was that.
Wow. But how did that morph from the music to the performances?
Well, I studied music. I went to college and I studied music. And at Mills College, Bob Ashley was my teacher. And he kind of expanded the idea of what music was. So my work, my performance work, is very much constructed like music rather than theater. So, and he did a lot of pieces where he was talking, so it was just kind of a natural thing for me to.
Do you get stage fright when you perform?
Yes.
Okay. Have you ever gotten over that?
No.
Okay.
But it only lasts for maybe 5 or 10 minutes, and then I forget about it. But the
Okay.
first 5 or 10 minutes is quite scary.
I asked that question. I think you probably all know, maybe you don't know this, but I know that Robert Rauschenberg, from the beginning to the end, that every time he had an exhibition, he would go in the back room and throw up because he was so nervous. So just, I don't know if do the rest of you get nervous before a show?
Yeah, maybe a little bit.
Okay, so do artists need to go to art school or study art? And then what is the value of learning skills? Because as you know, I look at a lot of art online daily, and there's a lot of art that's that I'm not interested in, that could really benefit from some better skills. So do you think that artists these days need to have a kind of professional training? Okay, you want to start?
Yeah, I don't think it's imperative to go to art school, but I do think that it is valuable to be part of a learning community. I think to be exposed to different perspectives, to learn new skills, that's all really important. For me, the learning and acquiring of new skills is ongoing.
Right. That's true. That's great. Dal, what do you think?
Well, I have mixed feelings about it because I think one of the things is that colleges, and having taught in the college and being familiar with the whole structure over time, realizing that they're just, they're big businesses like almost any business. And I think one of the problems is that a lot of people don't have the opportunity to go to college for financial and resource reasons. So that shouldn't dissuade or make people feel like they can't pursue their careers. But how do you do that when you don't have a support system? So I think the time in college for me was wonderful, and I was able to do that partly by working and partly by getting some finance help from my parents. And at the time I was in college, it wasn't that expensive, so it was kind of a different time. So that's a little bit of a relative situation, but it was very important to me to have, the years in college where I was just focused in that environment and not having to really do much else, but think about what I was pursuing. So it was very valuable for me personally.
Yeah, I think looking back, I hope you all agree that those moments when you can go to school and just, work with colors or cameras or music and not have to worry about a lot of other stuff we were all pretty lucky. I have to say. Jill, what about you?
Well, I mean, I thought it was great. You learn a lot of things. You can use it or not use it, and it expands your mind, because when you're 18 or whatever, you don't know everything. And but the friends that you make in college, I mean, can just be invaluable,
Right.
wonderful things for the rest of your life. So I think it's a good idea if you can do it.
That's a good point. Jim, what about you?
I pretty much agree with everything that has been said so far. I mean, there's pros and cons, and the price point is a big issue. So it's a tough one. And really, I mean, I think the greatest aspect that I got out of going to school was the negative criticism. Because most of the time, you don't get that from your friends or from your act with. But when you're in the academic program, especially the Master's Arts Center, was pretty brutal, and it really makes you hard and put it back together. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So this is kind of an odd question. I don't really believe it's true, but I want to know what you think. Do you think that New York is still the center of the art universe? Do you think it's worthwhile still for an artist to start and end their career in New York? Do you think that New York is still the sort of center of the art world? Jill.
Well, when I was having my master's thinking with Bob Ashley, the only thing he said during the whole thing was, well, if you did that play in New York, people might have walked out. So I figured going to New York was important. And I think it was.
Do you think it's important now for performance artists, for young theater, musical
Well, I
art?
think so, just because there's probably more places to play. I mean, if you're in the middle of nowhere like I am now, there's absolutely no place you could put on a play,
Right.
or anything for that matter. So yeah, I think so. And it's just that, the concentration, the amount of other artists there, I think that's really important, just the volume of other artists there and other people.
Okay, what do you think?
Well, I started in New York. I started my life there, born and raised in New York. And I think it definitely has given me a different perspective from people who haven't spent time there or aren't from there. With regard to the art market, definitely, it's an important place in the art market, but I have to say that LA is really kind of neck and neck, and not just from the perspective of galleries coming to LA, but also the caliber of artists and the volume of professional artists. So I think New York is still important, though. I mean, I like I said, born and raised and trained. I went to school, New York. I mean,
Just a quick question. Do you think that the museums in LA support the artists like they do in New York?
That's a tough question.
Yeah. You're welcome.
That is a tough question, which I don't want to answer.
That's totally fair. That's fair. Jim, what do you think about New York?
I'm not sure. I haven't been there very much, but I'm just wondering, did you use the term art capital world?
Center.
Sorry?
Center of the art.
Center.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of like In finance, globally, there's usually a capital of finance, a global capital of finance. Imagine there's a capital of art, a global capital of art, and it probably moves, but I imagine New York probably still has a lot of to still be the art capital. But I don't really follow that stuff, so I'm not. I can't really answer it. But I do know that these things can move over time, and
Right.
it could be that it moves to LA, or it could be moved somewhere in Europe.
Right. Sure. Dal, what do you think?
Oh man, that's well, I think New York like to think of itself as being the capital of the art world, but that's kind of an American thing too, isn't it? It's I think Europe has had a huge, started there kind of with, if you're talking about Western, kind of idea of art, Europe kind of held that for a long time. New York kind of took it over. And, from the 60s, I remember, it was kind of the beginning of the heyday of the whole gallery scene and
Right.
all that. I think it's, I don't know. I don't pay too much attention to it because it's not my world. It's like, this is big capital. This is big money talking that we control this and we control that in the gallery thing. And I've gotten in my old age a little disgusted by the whole capitalist kind of system that exists around everything, including art. So, at the same time, everybody needs to earn a living. But is New York the center of the art world? I don't think so. I don't want to believe that it is, because if I believe that it is, I'm kind of giving up the hope that maybe it's more eclectic and other places are doing things, and every place has its kind of own world. And, I live in a little, agricultural cow town. But what can I say? I don't know.
Well, this is an interesting discussion to have, because I actually have been to New York 3 times in the last 7 months, and have spent a great deal of time in the museums and galleries and whatever. And post-COVID or during COVID or whatever, I think that nobody in the art world there seems to really know where things are going. I think they're all just trying to figure out how to stay in business. But I do know that what's happening from my viewpoint is that you have these huge galleries that are just like, museum lights, the Gagosian and Pace and Zwerner and Hauser and Wirth. They have these huge spaces, and their artists sell for millions of dollars, and they seem to have become legitimate institutions. And I don't know how that helps anybody except for those 4 artists or 4 art dealers. And I do know that art fairs, as you all know, have sort of taken over the world. You can go anywhere at any time to an art fair. And they're opening up art fairs everywhere, and except they become more and more expensive to go to, and more expensive to participate in. And so what you're all saying is all incredibly true and legit, and yet these things keep happening. And I just wonder if you have any idea about what effect it has on people in Los Angeles and Fresno and Portland and Rancho Mirage. I mean, does it have any effect? Because are you all trying to get into a bigger gallery or a bigger place to show your work? Do you feel the pressure? That's a question. Do you feel the pressure to be involved with that? Jill.
Can you repeat the question?
because of the kind of the way things are expanding in New York and then through art fairs and whatever, do you feel pressure to sort of, take the next step, or it's like you were at the Whitney a couple of years ago. Do you feel that you need to, show like at the Met or show in Europe or Berlin or where? I mean,
No,
no, you don't feel pressure.
not at all.
Great. Jay, what about you?
So I don't feel pressure to show with Hauser and Wirth or the big blue chips. However, I do feel a constant expansion is good for my business.
Mhm.
So exhibiting internationally is definitely something that I want to continue to do. But it's with, small to medium-sized galleries. It's not with the big international galleries.
Well, I'm always surprised that those big four or whatever I just wonder how long they will be able to continue to stay in business like that. But that's just my little feeling. Jim, what do you think?
I think the internet plays a really crucial role.
The what does?
Everything now. The internet plays a pretty crucial role in everything, and it really changes how you can connect with everything else. So I don't necessarily feel pressure to show work. In fact, I don't really enjoy showing work very much because it costs me so much to. But I do love getting exposure online because I connect with people, and that sometimes leads to very positive things.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a trade-off. I mean, the physical aspect of doing a show, shipping all this stuff, having it framed, especially if it has to go international. I'm lucky if I break even. So that's the reality of it, and so it's a constant.
Dal, what about you? Oh, sorry, Jim. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, that's okay. No, I'm done.
Well, I've been in Fresno a long time, and I've had representation with galleries both in Los Angeles and San Francisco. And, it doesn't last because I'm not in those places. And I think, if you're really proactive and aggressive, you need to be in those places where things are happening. So for me, it's kind of like I'm here. I do what I do because I'm doing what I do. But the rewards are probably not what I dreamed about as a young person. I mean, I think those ideas of being represented by a gallery and having your big paintings in a museum and all that stuff is, that's what happens when you're young. You idealize a lot of this stuff. The reality is that it's a tough deal, and unless you're willing to kind of put yourself on the line and compromise or not compromise some things. If you have a family, that makes it tough. So you do things to kind of make a world for yourself. And so all that stuff I followed for years, subscribed to the magazines, paid attention to all that business. And pretty soon it's just, it's too much to absorb. And I think it took away from my own personal need to figure out what I was doing on a daily basis. So, it's out there. I don't have those dreams anymore. And I'm happy kind of where I am. I would love to sell more work because it's always nice to have some income. And that's always kind of a problem, isn't it? So that's my feeling.
And yeah, it's good. It's good. Let me ask all of you, what is the best art experience you have had? I'm going to start with Jim. And Jim, we need you to speak up a little bit.
Is that better? Can you hear me?
I think that's better.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's hard to do a number one, but a very positive experience I had was the first time I visited the Getty Villa in Malibu. I was 18, and it was pretty amazing just to be in that space and all the things that were in there. So that's, comes to mind as a positive experience.
Great. Gay, what was the best art experience you've had? Besides this, of course.
I'm sorry, except this, right? Can I tell a story? I mean, I have this story that is just, it has stuck with me for all these years since I was
Of course.
4 years old.
Oh, great.
So I grew up in New York, right? I already said that. When I was a little girl, my mother would drop me at this corner pharmacy, and they'd keep an eye on me while she ran her errands. I would sit at this lunch counter and I would talk with this elderly man who was always there. His name was Walter Pluthner. Mr. Pluthner was a really interesting guy. I mean, picture this, I'm like 5 or 4, and he's probably 70. It was crazy. And it turned out that he was an architect and an artist. Well, so I talked about this guy all the time. My mother's like, who is this man? And so I introduced him to my mother, who also thought he was a super cool guy. And then I introduced him to my whole family, who also adored him. And I remember going down the street to his house. He lived near the pharmacy. I went many times, and it was a magical art experience, unbelievable. His yard was filled with treasures, like cat's eye marbles and bits of colorful broken tile and sculpture tucked in here and there. Amazing. Inside of his house, he had art everywhere. He drew and painted on every kind of surface, like on egg crates, inside book covers, and he even made a painting on ceiling, which back then was kind of unusual. So, and he said that he made the painting on the ceiling so that when you woke up in the morning, you couldn't help but be happy.
Oh, wow. Oh, God. That's great. That's great.
This is the
Great
best.
story.
That's a great story. Did you ever find out what happened to him, or
Well, he was kind of a controversial figure in my town. Definitely not mainstream, and definitely kind of a little prickly. And he lived in this very cool old house, and people kind of made it difficult for him, but we loved him. He was old when I met him. Like I said, I was probably like 4 or 5, maybe. And he was like in his 70s. And so he continued making art for the rest of his life.
That's great.
But he had been like this famous or well-known architect in New York. And like he worked on the Grand Central Station, and he had all these gorgeous country houses on in the Hamptons and up in Connecticut. And I mean, it's just amazing. He was an amazing guy.
Thank you for that. That's a great story. I like that.
And I'm sitting here at my kitchen table, and I'm looking at the wall across from me, and in a lucite box, I have a painting on an egg crate. It's like, it's amazing.
Very cool. Yeah, very cool. Dal, what about you? What's your best art experience?
Well, you had the question of what was your best and what was your worst.
Yeah.
And I think I can put but both those together in one story. And I'll try to be quick about it.
No worries.
When I was a graduate student, I had an advisor who commissioned me to do a family portrait. He had 2 children and a wife and himself. And I made this painting in a kind of hard edge fashion, which was what I was doing at the time, kind of a la Andy Warhol. And he gave me the paint. It was $125 commission, and he gave me half the money. I completed the painting and gave it to him. And about 4 or 5 months later, I realized I hadn't been paid the rest of the amount. And I asked him about it. And he said, oh, yeah. I'd like you to make some changes. And I was kind of fuming about it. And I waited a while longer. And then I called him again, and it was summertime. I was ready to leave the college and go on vacation. And I said, I want to finish the painting because I want to collect my money. He said, okay, come on over. I'm taking a nap. I'll leave the door open. So I went over to his house with my paint supplies, and the painting was hanging in his living room over his couch. And I took the painting out into his courtyard, and I pulled the material that I had brought along, which amounted to 1 brush and a tube of black paint. And I proceeded to paint mustaches on all the family members. And I left the painting and was gone. Now, the reason for the change was that his daughter had decided to have a nose job in the interim. And I just, I thought it was a little bit too much to ask. And, after completing this piece. So I left and I came back. I was teaching in the fall, and I was walking through the building, and he comes from the other direction, and he sees me, and he's kind of in shock. Like that I was there while I was employed to teach. And he came up to me and he said, like, you destroyed property. I turned this into the police, I turned it into the insurance company, and they retouched the painting, and if you were a man, you would have hit me. And I said, Michael, I said, I know you. If I would have hit you first, you would sue me. So you hit me first, and then I'll hit you. Or, some kind of dialogue. Like, it was silly nonsense for a young guy. But anyway, the point is that I did this piece, and it was kind of an eye-opening experience for me. So it was horrible in the sense that I kind of had to go through all that, and it was great in the sense that it kind of let me know who I was and what I needed to do to survive and be who I wanted to be as a person. And so that was that. That's
great. That's great. Jill, what about you? What was the best experience you've had?
I was thinking for myself, it was the group show I was in at the Whitney. But then I thought of the first moment when I got what art was, I didn't really get whatever the big fuss about paintings were. And I was in Europe, and I remember going to the Van Gogh Museum, and I was standing there looking at this Van Gogh painting, and all of a sudden it just hit me. It was like, oh, this painting looks like it has a life force.
Oh, wow.
It absolutely looked alive. And that was just an incredible epiphany that stayed with me forever.
Oh, that's great. Do you remember what painting?
I think it was just one of the classic ones.
Mm.
But I don't remember which one.
So Dal kind of beat me to it. Would you talk about the worst experiences you've had Oh, Jill, why don't you go?
I think most of the performance art that I saw in New York.
Well, that's good, Jill. Anyone in particular that?
No,
Okay. Gay, what about you? Do you have an equally mesmerizing story about your worst experience?
Well, you've met the culprit earlier in the discussion here, Lucy, Ray of Sunshine. I don't know if I would say it was the worst, but it was definitely an expensive experience. I'd adopted her, and one day she went tearing through the studio, and I mean tearing. She landed on this heavy frame painting, which then fell into the middle of another painting and cut the canvas from top to bottom.
Oh,
Completely irreparable damage. I mean, there was no fixing this painting. So it was kind of shocking and hilarious at the same time.
yes.
Very expensive experience.
That's funny. Oh my.
I didn't like that painting.
And those of us who have animals, we certainly understand what that is. Jim, what about you? What's your worst experience?
Oh, I'm not sure if I have a worst one.
Really?
Varying degrees. I mean, I really have a hard time when I go to, especially a museum, and it's really crowded.
Okay. Okay.
Experience. So that would be probably crowded spaces.
A friend of mine was recently in Paris, and she posted a picture from the Musée d'Orsay, and it was just you just couldn't walk. There were so many people there that you could not see the art. You know, I mean, you know, on one hand, yay, lots of people liking art, but on the other hand, you really can't see the art, and I think that would be horrible. I mean, absolutely horrible.
Yeah, I just remembered there was a specific time at the Met. It was Matisse's show, and it was wall-to-wall people. You could not even. Yeah, it's really hard to see anything.
Right. Like,
why am I here? And yeah, so that's a negative.
Yeah, I hear you. What would you like to see, or anything? What would you like to see happen, sort of next in your career? Dal, why don't you start?
Well, I don't know. I guess. I don't really know. I guess it would be nice. It's always nice to have representation, you know, because you make these pieces, and you know, I have an archive of work just sitting there, nobody's seen, or very few. So it'd be nice to have, you know, places to show, more opportunities. I guess more opportunities, it would be good. I guess everybody needs opportunities, but yeah, I just to be healthy and continue making pictures, I guess would be
That's
the
good.
best thing.
Yeah, that's great. Jill, what about you?
Well, I have a record coming out in a couple months, and I would like to go on tour with a great band.
Wow. That's great. Do you know when the record is coming out?
September 17th.
Great. Well, everybody should mark that down. What's the title of your record?
It's called I Really Want to Bomb You.
And one thing I know is that it's actually on vinyl. So I would say that everybody should buy her record.
It's on vinyl and CD,
Oh, and oh, good, great.
and it'll be streaming too.
Oh, great. Gay, what about you?
Uh,
Did you?
I would like to continue sharing my art globally.
Great. Jim.
Oh, I agree with Gay. I like that one. But one of the things is just being able to have the time to devote entirely to active. That's really key for me. Whether or not where this stuff goes is secondary, as long as I have momentum that keeps forward and stuff comes back to me that allows me to focus all my time on doing what I
Right.
want to do.
Right. I'm going to ask one more question about your work and then we'll sort of wrap it up. When I was teaching at Art Center, I would tell students that the definition of art is autobiography with the transformation of materials thrown in. While I understand that that's a facile definition, I do think that there's some truth to that. And I wanted to know, how much does autobiography play in your work? Gay.
In my work, the work is about delivering an experience for the viewer. And so I paint something I've seen that has left an impression. And I suppose that's autobiographical with respect to that moment in time. It's about what I experienced and what I would like to share with the viewer.
Yeah, well, you definitely impart that California experience of sea and sand and sun is really, really palpable, I would imagine. I agree. Jill, what about you? I mean, I know that you call your pieces puzzles, right? What
Oh, yeah. Well, everything, a lot of the stuff is just stuff from my life or autobiographical, but most of it is things that I was bothered about, that I couldn't figure out how they worked or why they were. And so me trying to figure that out, like the power, or, why Hitler seemed like this or whatever, different things, or history, or whatever, things that I just bugged me so much that I couldn't figure out. But a lot of it is autobiographical, and it's all mixed up together for sure.
Great. Dal, what about you?
Boy, I guess because my work has changed so much, trying to figure out, where that information comes from. But I think, the bones of things are important to me. The framing of a house has always been more intriguing to me than the skin that's put on it, usually architecturally. So it's like how things are made, the structure of things, and the detritus of society, the little things that we take for granted or don't even pay attention to, and kind of focusing on that kind of stuff, trying to make things important that most people don't pay attention to. So I guess I don't know how autobiographical that is, but those are the kinds of things that intrigue me, kind of stuff that's in the background, the layers of things, sort of archaeology, all that kind of stuff, which is kind of my background and my family, archaeologists and anthropologists. So, all that stuff sort of rubbed off. And I guess I think a lot about that when I'm making a painting and, putting pieces together. I don't know.
That's good. Thank you. And Jim, what about you?
Were you asking the question of what we thought art was, or if it is autobiographical? Artwork, or if our work's autobiographical?
Yeah, if it's autobiographical, does that play into your work at all?
I'm sure it does, at least on a subconscious level. But I don't think you can really escape or making from you, pulling it from somewhere else, maybe conscious,
Right.
and wherever it's coming from. and you're synthesizing this thing, and so it's part of you. But I guess it really depends on at what level of consciousness, if that makes any sense.
Sure, absolutely. Does anybody have anything else that they'd like to say?
Well,
Any-
I want to say I love looking at people's paintings on Facebook, and I feel like I get to go to these wonderful galleries every day. So I just love looking at people's paintings on Facebook, and it's just I don't have to go to the gallery and walk around. Although I like to see it in person, I just think that's a wonderful thing that's happened. So
Right. Did you look at everybody's work?
I don't know where to see it.
No, I mean, but online, you saw Gay's work and
Oh
Dal's?
yeah.
Great. Yeah. Anyone else want to say anything?
I would say,
Thanks.
speaking about the digital world, one of the things that I have a problem with is the actual appearance of the work online. I always feel like nothing really holds up online to what I see in the studio, and I'm a little bit bothered by that. I don't know how I can make better pictures of the work, and I guess I can try, but I still think there's something lost because of scale, and that's really important to me. So as much as I like looking at work online and kind of seeing what people are doing, I know there's something more there. It could be worse or it could be better, but I always feel like I'm not really getting the experience that I want to have, standing in front of a piece. So
How old are your kids?
my oldest will be 50 in December, and then I have a daughter who's 47 and another son who is 42. So
That doesn't help. Because I was going to say, if any of you had kids that were like 16 to 25, they would feel very differently, which is what I think is so interesting. I know what you're saying. I just always err on the side that if I like it online, I'm going to like it even more in real life. So
I don't understand this NFT thing and why anybody would want a digital thing. I don't get that at all.
That was one of my questions, and I didn't ask it because I didn't like you, Jill. I don't get it. I don't get how. Does anybody? Well, no, Jim. I know you are interested in NFTs. Would you like to sort of talk about them for a second?
Oh, I don't do NFT, but I can tell you something interesting.
Yeah.
Is that my brother is working with this company that is trying to incorporate NFTs, which right now you own a digital file. You don't own anything physical. He's working with these guys that are trying to connect the NFT to the physical art world, so that, for example, a museum can sell an NFT share of a painting in their collection. So essentially, you're connecting the NFT. It's like a Bitcoin or something. It's a digital currency connected to a physical object that has cultural value. The fascinating thing, I think, with the NFTs, and I think it's a mania personally, it's all about perception. But if enough people believe something is going to increase in value, they're going to buy it.
That's right.
And then, that's going to change. That just, it's a perception issue. NFTs can be canceled like anything else. It just, once it gets that momentum, when there's no one left to buy, to buy into an NFT, that's the top, and then it goes down. Anything speculative. So it is fascinating in the sense of the mania, the psychology behind it. But personally, I wouldn't invest $1 in an NFT. I don't see, from my perspective, I don't see how it has any longevity.
Right.
Unless it is connected to something physical.
It is fascinating to see the prices that they're getting for, like you say, this digital file. It's kind of ridiculous.
But again, at the bottom of everything is the psychology of perception. Then it has its own momentum.
Yeah. I would like to thank, first of all of the people who are listening, but I would especially like to thank all of you for participating. I got a very clear and precise view of all of you, and it's all different, which I love. And I think that the people who will be seeing your work at on BG, the BG Gallery website and on my website will also get a very clear and wonderful view of all of you. I learned a lot, and you never know where things wind up in the art world. I'm so glad that we all have this chance to talk. More importantly, I think talking about the gallery, it's a great opportunity to start an art collection of some of their work or add to it. And I urge people who are listening to please do take advantage of it. I will post all of your websites on my website, artrepdg.com, and you will be able to contact me or the gallery for purchases. The gallery is the BG Gallery in Santa Monica, California, and their website is bgartdealings.com. I have to say, and I sound like a fangirl, but it's all true. I love all of your work, which is why I asked you to participate, because I love all of your work. And I think that, Jill, I hope that some smart person from college in Southern California will see your work and want to put on a show, or else have your band start there. And I just hope that you all have enjoyed this as much as I have. And I would like to thank you very, very much for your participation. It meant a lot. So
That was great, Debbie. Really good. Really
thank you so much, Jill. There you have it.
Thank you so much.
Oh,
I wish I could see all of your work in person.
Thanks, Debbie. It was really great of you to do this.
It's my pleasure. It's definitely my pleasure.